In 1970, President Nixon created the Environmental Protection Agency, otherwise known as the EPA. Many mark this as the start of the U.S. environmental policy. Since the EPA start, it has endured much. Reagan cut funding in favor of protecting business. Conservative presidents since then have favored business over the environment, while presidents like Clinton and Obama have been supporters of a stronger environmental policy. This has caused tension between the U.S. and the world, just like how Bush refused to be a part of the Kyoto Protocol. In recent news, President Trump pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Many people don't know what the accords are in detail and how it started. Here is some background information.
The Paris Climate Agreement was first adopted on December 12, 2015 in Paris, France. The accords aim to strengthen the global response to the threat of climate change, as well as the ability of countries dealing with its impacts. It was acknowledged that the threat of climate change was urgent and possibly irreversible, thus in need of the support of all nations. While 195 members of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, also known as the UNFCCC, have signed the agreement, only 148 of them ratified the Paris Climate Agreement. The only two not to ratify the accords were Syria and Nicaragua. Syria, which has been in turmoil since 2011, was not able to send a representative to sign the agreement. On the other hand, Nicaragua wanted the agreement to be tougher and felt that the developed countries should be contributing more. The U.S. was one of the parties to ratify the accord, with President Obama ratifying it on September 3, 2016.
The accord's central goal was to keep the increase in global average to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, as stated by the United Nations. However, an even greater and more ambitious goal would be limiting the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. To help the developing countries with the transition from fossil fuels to greener sources of energy, as well as help with the adaptation to the effects of climate change, the developed world would provide $1 billion a year. The nations don't expect emissions, otherwise known as gases and particles put into the air, to be reduced immediately. However, it is expected for the reductions to begin in 2020.
On June 1, 2017, President Trump stated that the U.S. will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. Trump argues that the money that the U.S. gives to help other developing nations to meet the goals set in motion by the accord is being wasted. The U.S. could have just stopped making payments to the fund and still be in the Paris Climate Accord, but this did not happen. Also, Trump argues that following along will cause the economy to suffer, especially in the manufacturing sector. He proclaims that China and India do not have to follow the accords, yet both are either ahead of schedule or are on track for reducing their carbon emissions. Trump argues that jobs in coal will be kept if the U.S. pulls out, but the U.S. has been working on moving away from coal and into more sustainable and cleaner energies.
Since President Trump has pulled out of the agreement, there has been backlash across the nation and the globe. In every state, there is at least 50% support of staying in the Paris Climate Accords. Trump said, "I was elected to represent the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris." Despite the fact that the city voted for Clinton in the 2016 election, the mayor was outraged that his city was being used as an example. Even big businesses were upset. Elon Musk left his position in Trump's administration. Some CEOs spoke out angrily on Twitter, and many American companies signed a letter to Trump arguing for him to keep America in, as they see it will hurt America's economy in the long run. Even his own Secretary of State, Tillerson, and his daughter, Ivanka, were strong supporters of remaining in the accords. Across the globe, World leaders have expressed their disappointment with the US, some even going to extremes of mocking Trump and his decision, like Macron.
Although Trump's decision to pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement has evoked mass outrage and mockery, it does not mean that there will be an end to all domestic efforts to address climate change. In fact, states such as California and New York will continue to pursue their own programs to reduce emissions regardless of Trump's decision. Leaders in Europe, China, and India have also insisted on carrying out the goal with or without the United States. But with the US as the world's second largest emitter pulling out, other countries may soon be discouraged to take further steps in reducing emissions. The decision to pull out could put the US at odds with other nations. Even before Trump's decision, the efforts of curbing emissions have already begun to fall short, although no nations have yet to fall off course. Climate change may also become more of a severe issue and could possibly harm the economy even further.
In the few days after Trump's decision to pull out of the Paris Climate Accords, Governor Inslee of Washington, Governor Brown of California, and Governor Cuomo of New York formed the United States Climate Alliance. The United States Climate Alliance is a group of states committed to upholding the Paris Agreement. As of June 8, 2017, there are 12 states, plus Puerto Rico, a part of the Climate Alliance. Hawaii is the first state in the alliance and in the U.S. to enact laws to keep up with goals set in the agreement. Despite the federal government turning its back on the environment, many states are taking these matters into their own hands.
The Paris Climate Agreement is just one piece of a much bigger picture. Climate change has been a major issue in American politics since the 70s. As time has gone on, the evidence supporting that climate change is occurring has only grown, but this has not stopped many from denying it. Since 1880, 16 of the 17 warmest years have occurred since 2001, with the exception of 1998. The year 2016 was the warmest on record since 1880. The issue of climate change has seemingly become partisan as Democrats seem to accept the facts, while many Republicans deny these facts and go out of their way to protect big business as much as possible.
In recent years, environmental issues have become a bigger issue for many voters. In the 2008 presidential election, Obama got the majority in all mainstream environmental groups. This year, there was the Scientist March on Washington, and has provided more and more evidence to support that climate change is truly happening. So far, it seems that pulling out of the Accords has angered more Democrats than Republicans. But the U.S. Climate Alliance is bipartisan. With a bipartisan board of people, there is hope that more are taking science seriously. Although only time can tell what the Paris Climate Agreement will truly rally in the U.S.